This happened a few months ago. I was 32 and took a night shift as a janitor in a big office. I had gone through a divorce and needed the money. Night shifts seemed simple. I never guessed how strange it would get. On my first night, I went through my usual cleaning routine. It was quiet, just me and the hum of the lights. After I cleaned the bathrooms and swept the floors, I went to the break room. The lights flickered above me. I checked the counter and saw the coffee pot simmering again. I thought I had turned it off. It was odd, but I shrugged it off. Maybe I was just tired. The next few nights were different. I started hearing whispers in the halls. At first, I thought I imagined them. I could have sworn I heard names. Names of people I didn't know. It sent a shiver down my spine, but I told myself it was just the building settling or the air system playing tricks on me. Then, one night, I was mopping when I glanced into one of the glass offices. I saw a figure. I blinked, and he was gone. My heart raced. I thought it was a coworker, but I looked around and saw no one. The floor was empty. I kept cleaning, but the chill stayed with me. Another time, I caught a strange smell. It was sweet and old, like dusty books, the kind I used to read as a kid. The scent lingered. I thought it was just my tired mind, but it followed me throughout my shift, refusing to let go. As I mopped the floors, I felt watched. I looked over my shoulder, but only shadows stared back. I felt uneasy. This was just a job, right? But those feelings were harder to shake off. I started questioning everything. Were the whispers real? Who was that figure? And why couldn't I shake that smell? Then one night, as I finished up, I heard my name. It was soft, almost gentle. I turned around but found no one. My heart pounded in my chest. That silence was heavier than it should have been. I felt something shift in the air. I didn't feel alone. But I was. The next few shifts passed slowly. I kept trying to focus on work. But every sound set me on edge, every flicker made me jump. I told myself it was just the stress. But I couldn't ignore the moments. They lingered in my mind, crevices of fear bubbling to the surface. Then, while cleaning the break room one night, I swear I heard laughter. Not joyful but hollow, like it came from somewhere dark. I dropped my mop. It echoed in the empty room. I peered around, my breath quickening. Nothing but darkness. That job became a puzzle of fear and uncertainty. I wanted the paycheck, but I didn't want to go back. I was scared now. I still think about those incidents. What was happening during those nights? There is no clear answer. Just shadows and whispers that came alive. The night felt different. I walked into the office, and the air was thick. I didn't know if it was just my nerves or something more. I started my shift, sweeping the floors with that same mundane motion. But I could almost feel the weight of the building surrounding me. Once the floors were clean, I headed towards the break room. As I pushed the door open, the lingering smell hit me again. That sweet, dusty aroma. I looked around, but nothing seemed out of place. Just the empty room, and the flickering light bulbs overhead. I took a deep breath, chalking it up to my imagination playing tricks. As I confined myself to the dull routine, I heard whispers again. This time, they were louder, more distinct. I could almost make out words. It felt like they swirled around me, a chorus of voices rising and falling. I froze, gripping my mop tighter. The air felt colder, and it took everything in me to stay put. I wanted to run, but I forced myself to stand still and listen. Then, in the quiet, a voice broke through. It wasn't my name this time. It was a woman's voice. Soft but urgent. It seemed to call from the depths of the office, somewhere beyond the break room. My heart raced. I didn't want to answer, but curiosity tugged at me. I followed the sound. I stepped into the dimly lit hallway. The whispers faded, replaced by a pin-drop silence. I looked left and then right, unsure of where to go. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement. A figure darted into an adjoining office. My pulse quickened. "Hello?" I called, hoping for an answer. But all I got was silence. I approached the office cautiously, peering through the glass door. It was empty except for a chair that hung slightly, as if someone had just been sitting in it. My breath caught in my throat. I hesitated but pushed the door open, stepping inside. It felt colder in here. The smell was stronger. I glanced around and saw something on the desk, a photo frame turned face down. I picked it up, my hands trembling. When I flipped it, I was taken aback. It was a picture of employees from some party. I recognized two of the faces, but the woman beside them was different. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. Something about her smile felt off, and it sent a chill down my spine. A sudden noise made me jump. I twirled around, but there was nothing behind me. Just shadows stretching across the walls. I quickly placed the frame back down. Whatever energy was in this place had escalated again. Feeling uneasy, I made my way back to the break room. That's when I heard it, laughter again, but it was closer this time, echoing in my ears. I stopped, trying to make sense of it. This wasn't just my imagination. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered off, plunging the space into an eerie stillness. I stood, frozen in the darkness, unsure of what was coming next. I knew I had to get out, but I felt the air shift again. As I turned to leave, the soft voice whispered my name once more. And this time, it sounded desperate. I needed answers. But stepping back into that cold, empty office, I could feel the weight of the unknown creeping closer. What had I stumbled into? I hesitated. The silence pressed in around me, thick and heavy. I could feel the weight of my own fear, but I knew I had to move. I turned and pushed the office door open, but before I could step back into the hallway, the lights flickered back on. I jumped, the sudden brightness blinding me for a moment. I blinked and scanned the hallway. It looked normal, empty and still. Heart pounding, I took a tentative step forward. A faint rustle came from one of the other offices down the corridor. My gaze shot in that direction. "Is anyone there?" I called out, the question sounding much weaker than I intended. No response. I took a deep breath and walked closer. The door to the office was slightly ajar. I reached out and pushed it open. Inside, the room was filled with dust and the chaotic contents of forgotten paperwork. But on the desk, a red file folder caught my eye. It lay wide open, pages slightly curled at the edges. I stepped closer, my curiosity getting the better of my anxiety. I started to read the pages. As I flipped through, I realized it was filled with notes, reports of strange occurrences from the last couple of years. Each entry detailed encounters similar to mine, whispers, shadows, unexplained laughter. I shivered. How many others had experienced this? Then one entry jumped out at me. It mentioned a woman, described as wearing a vintage dress, her presence often associated with cold spots and a feeling of unease. The writer, a former employee, seemed genuinely worried. They noted that she was last seen in the office on the night of an office party exactly like the photo I found, the one with that same woman. Just then, I heard a muffled sound behind me. I whipped around, but the office was still empty. The noise lingered though, a soft cry that echoed faintly in the still air. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet felt planted to the floor. A part of me needed to stay, to know more. I hesitated, torn between fear and a desire for clarity. That's when I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned, and sure enough, there she was, a figure in a tattered vintage dress standing in the doorway, her face obscured by shadows. My breath hitched, every rational thought slipping from my mind. "Help me," she whispered, her voice scarcely a breath. I didn't want to move, but the urgency in her voice wrapped around me. "What do you need?" I asked, my voice trembling. But just as I gathered the courage to step closer, she faded away, leaving only a cold breeze in her wake. I was left standing there, heart racing, desperately questioning everything. That's when I saw it, a glimmering object where she had stood. I approached, my heart pounding louder with each step. It was a small, ornate locket. I reached down, picking it up. As I held it, I felt a pull, like a connection to whatever had just unfolded. Suddenly, the laughter filled the air again, louder this time, more chaotic, echoing around me. I dropped the locket, my instincts kicking in. I had to leave this place. I turned to bolt back into the hallway when a loud bang shook the room. I stared into the darkness, the laughter still ringing in my ears. Whatever was going on here, it was escalating, and I didn't know how much longer I could take it. I bolted into the hallway, my heart racing faster than I thought possible. The laughter faded, but the adrenaline surged through my veins. I didn't stop to think about where I was going. I just needed to escape the office, to get away from that woman in the dress, and the whispers that echoed in my mind. As I sprinted towards the exit, the sound of my footsteps echoed against the cold tile floor. My breath came in quick gasps, and I glanced back, half expecting her to appear again. But the corridor was empty, shadows clinging stubbornly to the corners. I reached the front door and fumbled with the handle. It wouldn't budge. Panic gripped me as I pulled harder, but the door was locked tight. I pressed my back against it, my pulse drumming in my ears. What now? Then I remembered the window in the break room. It was old and sometimes stuck, but it would be easier than trying to force my way through the door. I turned and hurried towards the break room, each step filled with urgency. The break room was dark when I entered. The small window was barely visible on the far wall. I rushed over, my fingers trembling as I took hold of the frame. It creaked as I pulled it up. I gasped. Darkness closed in around me, suffocating. But I had to get out. I managed to lift the window just high enough to squeeze through. I climbed up onto the counter, my legs shaking as I hoisted myself over the sill. With a last glance at the shadowy room, I jumped out, landing in a clump of weeds outside the building. Breathless, I crouched low, my heart pounding as if I had just run a marathon. The cool night air was a relief, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I waited a moment, listening. The night was eerily quiet, no laughter, no whispers. As I made my way down the path leading away from the building, I caught a glimpse of movement in the window I had just escaped. My heart dropped. There she was once again, the woman in the vintage dress, this time staring right at me, her eyes glinting in the dim light. I stumbled backward, startled. This wasn't a mere figment, it felt real, and it unnerved me more than I wanted to admit. I turned and took off, not stopping until I reached my car. I fumbled with the keys, hands shaking as I finally managed to start the engine. I drove away, but the image of her still haunted my thoughts. I needed answers. It was too late. I couldn't shake the sensations from the office, the file with details about unexplained encounters, the locket. I needed to find out what had happened to this woman. But I already felt her pull on me, like quicksand dragging me back into the unknown. I reached for my phone. I needed to talk to someone, to get some clarity. I dialed Sarah, my coworker, praying she would pick up. "Hello?" came her voice, a little groggy but alert. "Sarah, I need to know if you've ever seen anything strange in the office," I said, urgency lacing my tone. There was a pause, then she muttered something about the night shifts. "You mean besides the usual? Like that old dress? The one people talk about?" A chill ran down my spine. I wasn't prepared for what she would say next. I thought it was just a rumor, but I heard someone saw her last week. "What do you mean?" I asked, heart racing again. There are stories, Sarah said slowly. Some say she doesn't want to be forgotten. What happened to her? I held my breath, the answer just out of reach, as I wondered if I would end up like her. The next day, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I couldn't go back to sleep, haunted by the image of the woman in the vintage dress. That night, I decided to return to the office. I needed answers, and I was going to find out what was really going on. As I drove back, the darkness hung thick around me. The familiar route felt different, almost menacing. Once I arrived, the building loomed in the distance, its outline stark against the moonlit sky. I parked quickly, anxiety bubbling up as I made my way to the entrance. The door, still locked, sent an icy shock through my veins. I had come prepared this time with a spare key from the office management. Inside, the silence was unnerving. The fluorescent lights flickered above, casting long shadows across the floor. I felt a mix of fear and determination swelling within me. I had to face whatever lingered in these hallways. I walked through the office, each step echoing in the void. It smelled stale, like time had stopped here. I reached my desk and rifled through the papers, looking for the file Sarah had mentioned. It took a few minutes, but finally, I spotted it wedged between the drawer and the wall. Just as I pulled out the folder, a chill raced down my spine. I quickly glanced over my shoulder. Nothing. I told myself it was just my imagination. As I flipped through the files, some names caught my eye: former employees who had reported odd occurrences during their shifts. The last entry dated back over a decade. It mentioned a party held in the office, a party where things had gone terribly wrong. The words disappearance and ghost lurked between the lines, unraveling my sense of reality. Suddenly, a loud sound jolted me from my thoughts. It came from the break room. My heart hammered against my chest. I quietly approached the doorway, peering in. The window I had escaped from the night before was now wide open. A rush of air stirred the paper on the table, but there was no one there. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. That's when I noticed something glimmering on the counter. I reached for it, revealing a delicate locket adorned with intricate designs just like the one from the file. My breath hitched. What was it doing here? Did it belong to her? Before I could process this new revelation, the lights flickered again, then plunged me into darkness. I cursed under my breath, fumbling for my phone. The screen's glow illuminated nothing but shadows dancing around me. That's when I heard a soft whisper slithering through the silence. Don't leave me. Panic seized me, and I spun around, trying to face the source. But the room felt like a twisted maze, the corners closing in. I needed to escape. I stumbled back toward the door just as the lights flickered on again. The figure of the woman was there, standing in the corner, her eyes locked onto mine. She reached out, and it felt like the room was pulling me closer to her. I screamed as I bolted toward the exit, adrenaline coursing through me once again. I had to get out before I, too, became just another name in that file. I burst through the office door, my breath ragged and heart pounding like a drum. The hallway felt longer than ever, stretching out before me like a cruel joke. I sprinted, my footsteps echoing against the cold tiles. I wouldn't let her whatever she was pull me back. As I reached the exit, I fumbled with the door handle. It felt icy under my clammy palms. Finally, it clicked open, and I stumbled outside, gulping in fresh air that felt alive, but still thick with unease. I stood on the pavement, trying to steady myself. My hands shook as I leaned against the car, wishing I could just drive away, far from this haunted office. I glanced back at the building, feeling an undeniable tug. Something compelled me to stay, to figure out what happened years ago. I shook my head. No, I couldn't. This wasn't just about me now. There were others. I dug my phone from my pocket and began searching for information about the party mentioned in the files. The woman's whisper replayed in my mind. Don't leave me. What did it mean? I knew I had to find out what really happened at that party. After a few minutes of scanning online forums and websites filled with ghost stories, I stumbled upon a local news article from a decade ago. It reported a mysterious incident at an office party where several employees vanished. The event received minimal coverage and was quickly forgotten. There was a chilling photo attached, a blurry image of the office crowd. I recognized some faces. They had worked at my office. One name stood out. It belonged to Sarah's predecessor, who was also reported missing after that same party. The coincidence sent a cold shiver down my spine. I texted Sarah, wondering if she knew anything about the disappearances or if she'd heard the stories. But her response came back quickly: "Why? What happened?" I hesitated, looping back into cold fear. Should I tell her everything? What if it scared her away, just like it terrified me? I decided to call instead. "Hello." Her voice was shaky. "Is everything okay?" "Sarah, I need to know, did you ever hear about the party, the one where people went missing?" I blurted out. There was a long pause. "Why are you asking?" "Because I just encountered something I need to understand. I've only heard rumors. They say those who disappeared can still be felt, that their spirits linger in the office." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Some think they're looking for help." I felt sick. "I think I met one of them." "Go back," she said hurriedly. You need to talk to her. It could be the key to solving everything." Her words hung heavy in the air, weighing down on me. There was no choice. I had to return, this time not just for answers but for the souls trapped within those walls. I couldn't leave them behind, not now that I knew they were there. I took a deep breath, steeling myself as I drove back to the office. As I parked, a shiver ran through me, not from the cold but from fear of the unknown. As I stepped out, the air suddenly felt thick, almost alive. I hesitated, glancing around. Then I saw it. A shadow drifting past the window, almost human, beckoning me to come inside. My gut tightened. This was it. I moved toward the entrance again, my heart racing with dread and determination. Whatever answers lay within those walls, I had to find them. I couldn't turn back now. The moment I stepped back inside the office, I felt an unsettling calm wash over me. The air was stale, clinging to my skin like an unwelcome embrace. I scanned the room, half expecting to see someone or something waiting for me. But the office was dark and empty, only the hum of the fluorescent lights breaking the silence. I hesitated before moving forward, each step deeper into the building spurring a mix of fear and resolve. I knew the office layout by heart, but tonight it felt foreign. My eyes darted to the corners, expecting shadows to take shape. I could almost hear the whispers again, soft and pleading. I headed toward the break room, where I had first encountered the presence. The plastic bags from takeout supplies crinkled as I moved, punctuating the eerie stillness. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I nearly jumped. It was a message from Sarah. "Are you okay?" I hesitated before typing back, "I'm inside. I'll let you know what I find." I wasn't sure I believed that myself. As I entered the break room, the air shifted. It was colder, an uncomfortable chill wrapping around me. Suddenly, I saw a ghostly reflection in the microwave, its outline faint but unmistakable. My heart raced. I turned around quickly, but there was nothing behind me. I approached the microwave cautiously, hands trembling. Should I call out? Try to communicate? Then I noticed something odd. The table was set with half-finished cups of coffee, like remnants of a meeting that never concluded. I leaned closer to inspect the mugs. They were cold and undisturbed. Just like the people who once occupied this space. "Can you hear me?" I whispered into the silence. My breath fogged in the cold air. Nothing. I felt foolish for talking to an empty room, but I couldn't ignore the need to connect. I pushed the words out again, louder this time. What happened to you? In response, I heard a soft rustling sound near the trash can. It caught my attention. I moved closer, adrenaline surging. That's when I saw a crumpled piece of paper poking out from the bin. I reached down and pulled it out, brushing off the dirt. As I unfolded it, a flicker of dread twisted in my stomach. It was a faded invitation. The elegant script read, "Join us for a night of celebration and camaraderie. Our annual office party." The date, 10 years ago, loomed ominously over me. The words "mysterious allure" were printed in bold, a slogan that resonated with me now in a very different way. I felt my breathing quicken. What secrets had that party held, buried under layers of time and tragedy? Worse, what if I had just opened a door I wasn't ready to walk through? Then, without warning, the lights flickered. My heart seemed to stop. A chill swept through the break room, and I felt an overwhelming presence behind me. I turned slowly, and there she stood, the woman from my earlier vision, face pale, eyes hollow, mouth pressed into a thin line of anguish. "Help me," she whispered, her voice delicate yet firm. I staggered back, my body frozen in horror. "What do you want?" I managed to choke out. The air thickened again, and I could see other figures materializing in the shadows behind her, a gathering of lost souls. They needed something from me, but what? Before I could process this, one figure stepped closer, pointing towards the door. In that moment, everything went dark. When the darkness enveloped me, I felt a rush of confusion. My senses screamed as I flicked on the flashlight on my phone, cutting through the gloom. The beam caught the edge of the table, now cluttered with more than just old coffee mugs. There were files strewn everywhere, papers hastily discarded. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe steadily. The flickering lights made every shadow tremble. I needed to get out of here, but my feet felt stuck to the ground. That cold air prickled at my skin, reminding me I wasn't alone. With cautious determination, I moved towards the door. The presence of the woman still lingered, like an echo of despair wrapping around me. "What do you want?" I called again, hoping for clarity amidst the chaos. There was nothing but silence. I stepped farther, my pulse racing as I reached for the doorknob. And that's when I heard a faint, melodic humming. It was distant but unmistakable, like a lullaby drifting through the air. It pulled at something deep within me. Letting curiosity override my fear, I paused. Following the sound, I turned back towards the break room. The humming grew louder, more insistent. It seemed to be emanating from the area behind the filing cabinets. My heart raced, torn between the urge to flee and the compelling need to investigate. I approached the cabinets, pushing one aside with effort. Dust clouded the air, and I coughed. Then, I caught a glimpse of a small, old-fashioned music box resting in the corner. Its surface was tarnished, and a delicate figurine of a ballerina sat frozen atop it. Reaching out, I felt a shiver run through me. My fingers brushed the box, and it sprang open. A haunting melody spilled out, resonating in the silence. The ballerina twirled gracefully, but her movements felt unsettling. Suddenly, an icy wind swept through the room, snuffing out my phone's light. I stumbled backward, colliding with the cabinets. "No! Don't!" I shouted, half expecting the spirits to take me too. In the darkness, I heard the whispers return, only now they were urgent, almost desperate. "Find us!" The voices were layered, overlapping, as they implored me. I felt panic rising, threatening to drown me. With trembling hands, I fumbled for my phone, desperately attempting to turn the light back on. It flickered to life, illuminating the break room once more. But the shadows shifted and morphed, the woman's ghostly visage returned, now with more figures crowding around. My breath hitched as I faced their haunted gazes. "Find us," the woman repeated, her voice echoing in my mind. "Find you where?" I gasped, feeling the weight of their sorrow press down on me. One of the figures stepped forward, eyes full of longing and fear. He pointed towards a calendar hanging on the wall, the date circled in red 10 years ago, a day I now realized held significance to all of them. Suddenly, the room shook, a deafening sound like thunder reverberating through the walls. I clamped my hands over my ears, unable to think clearly. The music box continued its mournful tune. It was too much. Then, without warning, everything went silent. The room felt heavier, like the air was being pressed down upon me. I turned my gaze to the calendar once more. It contained more than just a date, it held the key to the mystery they wanted me to unravel. My heart raced as I made a decision. I had to confront the truth of what happened that night. Whatever secrets lurked in those shadows were never meant to stay buried. I couldn't shake the chill as I stared at the calendar. The red circle loomed larger, as if daring me to dig deeper. 10 years ago, a night filled with dread that still echoed in this place. The whispers had quieted, but my nerves thrummed with anticipation. I had to know what happened. I glanced around the break room again. The shadows felt alive, flickering in the glow of my phone. I cleared my throat, forcing myself to break the silence. What happened on that date? I asked. Would they respond? Would they lead me to answers? The figures shifted, their expressions shifting from sorrow to urgency. The woman gestured toward the door, her eyes pleading. I hesitated, every instinct screaming to turn away, yet I couldn't ignore their pull. There was something waiting for me outside, and I needed to confront it. I stepped back into the hallway, my heart thumping erratically. As I moved cautiously, I thought I saw fleeting shapes darting along the corridor. It felt like they were leading me somewhere. I followed their frantic movements, adrenaline coursing through me. My mind raced with questions. What had these coworkers gone through? What dark secrets lay hidden behind those walls? Each step sent my anxiety through the roof as I approached the entrance to the storage room. I could feel the cool air seeping out, pulling at me like an invisible hand. I pushed the door open, and it creaked in protest. The storage room was cramped and cluttered with old furniture and boxes that hadn't been touched in years. A stale smell hit me, mingling with the faintest scent of something floral. I directed my light around, searching for anything unusual. That's when I saw it, a stack of old employee files, piled high on a worn table. My stomach knotted at the thought of uncovering secrets. I stepped closer, running my fingers over the covers, dusty and peeling. Names blurred together. I flipped them open one by one, absorbing the details until I spotted a name that made my heart skip, a name I recognized. Tom. He had been a cheerful coworker, always cracking jokes. But he left abruptly one night, never to return. My fingers trembled as I scanned the files, realizing there were notes scrawled in the margins. Desperate warnings about something lurking within the company, something to do with that fateful night. As I flipped to the next file, a sudden cold draft surged through the room, as though something had passed right through me. The papers fluttered violently. My phone light flickered ominously, and a primal sense of dread washed over me. Before I could react, a figure took shape in front of me. Tom, his eyes wide and desperate. "Get out!" he shouted, his voice breaking through the air like glass shattering. "You have to leave." I stumbled back, heart racing. But as soon as I took my eyes off him, he vanished. The chaos around me escalated. Papers swirled and the lights flickered like a dying star. I turned to run but was met with an icy wall, seemingly closing in. "Find us." I heard the voices, now echoing louder, angry and terrified. All the urgency came rushing back, fueling my instinct to flee. But then I remembered the date. Everything hinged on it. In the midst of the chaos, a sense of urgency hit me again. I had to uncover the truth, and fast. I couldn't leave now, not without answering their desperate pleas. As I glanced back at the doorway, ready to confront whatever came next, a sharp cry pierced the air. It echoed in the back of my mind, twisting my gut. I hesitated as new tension eclipsed my fear. What had I just uncovered? And before I could think, the lights went out again, plunging me into darkness once more, echoing Tom's warning. I was no longer certain who or what to trust. I needed to figure it out before it was too late. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to confront the darkness that enveloped me. Echoes of voices filled the air, growing louder yet mournful as if they were urging me to act. My heart pounded in my chest as I remembered the desperate plea from Tom and the others I had seen their need to be heard. "Okay," I whispered into the void. "I'm here. I'll help you." I hoped my words would resonate with whatever lingered in this haunted space. Clutching my phone tightly, I moved forward slowly, trying to regain my bearings. My pulse quickened as I recalled Tom's warning. The storage room had grown colder, the air thick with insistence. I realized then that the mystery wasn't merely about the past, it was about their unresolved fates. I glanced around the room, searching every dark corner with renewed purpose. Suddenly, the lights flickered on, illuminating the chaos around me. The old stack of files still lay rumpled on the table, and instinct told me that could hold the key. I approached, sifting through the papers once more. Names blurred together, but one entry caught my eye, a detailed report from the night of the party, the last before everything changed. According to the notes, there had been incidents of strange noises, peculiar occurrences escalating ahead of the office celebration. The final entry read, "After the party, several employees went missing. The last known location was storage." My breath hitched. They were here, lingering where their lives slipped away. As I caught sight of a familiar name at the bottom of the page, Sarah, I felt a chill ripple through the air. Her absence from the office hadn't been entirely unfounded. Something about the night of the party connected us all, but how? I heard it then, muffled sobs breaking through the air. They came from the back of the storage room. I steadied myself and walked toward the sound. "I'm here," I called softly. "I want to listen. Please, tell me what happened." The sobs grew louder, transforming into cries. Just beyond the old crates stacked high, I spied a dim figure shimmering softly in the darkness, the woman in the vintage dress, her form wavering as if caught between worlds. "Help me," she whispered again, her voice cracking with anguish. This time, it wasn't just a request, it was a plea filled with a heartbreaking urgency. She gestured towards the cluttered corner behind her. Taking a bold step forward despite the ominous presence of the unknown, I pushed through the disarray, moving closer to her. It was then I saw the truth, a tattered invitation sticking out from under a heavy box. Closer now, I recognized it. It had the same elegant script as the one I found earlier, the invitation to that fateful party. Once I lifted it up, the air shifted again. I felt a vibration surge through the room, a restlessness, as if the shadows pressed in from all sides, whispering in ways I couldn't understand. "Do you want me to find your names?" I asked, feeling ridiculous and hopeful. "Give me something to help you." For a split second, everything froze. Silence reigned as the shadows receded, and I was left alone with the flickering light and the invitation in my trembling hands. I held it aloft, feeling the weight of their collective sorrow. "Show me." But the room remained still, darkening with uncertainty. Echoes of the past yelled out but refused to clarify, leaving me swirling in ambiguity. Were they trapped in this place, waiting for someone to piece together their stories once again? Suddenly, the woman stepped closer, her form solidifying briefly. "The truth lies in the office," she murmured. "Remember." And just like that, her figure dissipated, leaving behind a palpable sense of urgency. I needed to return to the main office, to the spotlight of their shared horror, where their voices first whispered through the air. I clutched the old invitation tightly as I rushed out of the storage room and into the hallway, an icy blast of air following me as the door closed behind me. Lights flickered ominously as I approached the office. "I want to let you fade," I said, resolving to release whatever held them captive. The perspective shifted as I moved into the central part of the office. The desks and chairs stood frozen in time, remnants of lives once vibrant now echoing with despair. I positioned myself beneath the flickering lights, centering my thoughts on the shared pain etched into the very fabric of this place. "Tell me," I shouted into the empty room. "I need to listen. You're not forgotten." And then, the whispers returned beyond soft murmurs, they crashed like waves, uniting together an urgent crescendo. Memories spilled forth around me, surrounding me with fragmented voices, laughter, then cries, cracks of celebration fading into unexplained fading darkness, dimming laughter togged by fear. Through it all, the invitation lit my mind, a dazzling portal into their sorrow. Pieces began to click in place what had been buried slowly rising to the surface. I pondered the figure who had mysteriously disappeared and the stories I had heard. In that moment, the truth shifted violently, untethering the nightmare of their past onto my shoulders. I was to be their voice, their bridge to the living. Yet, with every new detail unraveled, the question loomed larger: what would become of me? Finally, the air thickened, memories merging into a coherent plea. "Let us go," they implored. "Break the barrier." In that instant, a picture emerged in my mind of their desires: reconciliation. They wanted acknowledgement, understanding, and release. As the lights flickered once more, I started to cry for the darkness that clung tightly to the office. "I promise," I choked out, waiting for the silence to settle once more. "I will find you, and I won't let the world forget." The whispers transformed into a soft hum, flooding the air with a possibility of peace. Exhausted yet resolved, I took a deep breath and stepped outside into the night. With the moonlight cradling my spirit, I moved toward my car, the weight of the invitation clutched in my palm, carrying the urgency of their stories intertwined with my fate. I would find the truth, ignite it, and bring clarity to the shadows where they lingered. But as I drove away, an unsettling thought lingered: what would that uncover? And would I ever truly escape the haunting of their ties? As I turned on the radio, the melody of an old tune played softly, a comforting hum caressing the uncertainty. I wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever awaited me in the shadows, we would face it together.